Welcome at the Growcast, the podcast of BlueCity and BlueCity Lab, in which we talk with 8 Rotterdam-based pioneering biodesigners, our so-called pioneers, about how a future will look like if we design with nature as our guideline. We started this podcast to celebrate the opening of BlueCity Lab, a biocircular playground for pioneers located in the heart of BlueCity.
We invited 4 frontrunners whose work will make us rethink everything we think we know, and 4 aspiring biodesigners who want to challenge the status quo. My name is Barbara Vos.
And I'm Emma van der Leest. In this podcast, we welcome Tim van Koolwijk and Brent Jackson of Spiro, a company producing fresh spirulina paste, a nutritious, vegan and sustainable ingredient used to fortify a wide variety of existing food products. In the BlueCity cellars, they grow spirulina in order to produce the healthy paste in and near the urban environment. Welcome, both of you.
It's something quite common, right? So what it is that you're using, this natural product?
It's not a lot of people have heard about it, and that's a bit strange because it's one of the oldest organisms that exist in the world right now. It's been around for 3.5 billion years, and it was earlier than bacteria. So it actually produced all the oxygen on the world to be able to give life or make sure that other life could develop. So in those billions of years, it's gotten more and more efficient, and it hasn't changed that much. And because of this, we can, they're tiny little strings, and you can see them with the naked eye. And all they do is split and grow and split and grow and split and grow.
So it's this miracle of nature.
Yeah, you could say that. It's like because it's one of the earliest organisms, it's also one of the most efficient, and because it's so efficient, it's very sustainable. And because it's all the way on the bottom of the food chain, you don't waste any energy, any nutrients by growing it, and it's a very direct way of getting to all these nutrients.
So we want to welcome you too. So we ask everyone how the current COVID crisis has affected their work. That's how we start. But I think if the crisis made one thing clear, it's how fundamentally wrong our current food system is. And now more than ever, we're pressed on the need to produce sustainable and healthy food for everyone, locally, even if the resources are scarce. And Spiro is an answer to that, isn't it? Tim, I'm asking it to you.
Yeah. The reactors that we're building right now are focusing on our Dutch climate, which isn't ideal for these kind of organisms. Like the spirulina grows best around the equator, like at 30 degrees and a lot of sunlight. We don't have that many good days like that here, so that's why we develop these reactors. And
but maybe before we start talking about reactors, because it's still so. What is? I have difficulty pronouncing it, as you all know. What is spirulina actually? So what can we use it for?
It's when we get it out of our tanks, you get like a green paste, which doesn't have like a real text, like a taste. So you can, or no smell at all. So you can just mix it in all kinds of foodstuffs that you like.
But it's edible, right?
Yeah. So you mix it in all the foodstuffs that you like, and you make them more healthy, but also a lot more sustainable.
I had it in my yogurt the other day. It's a bit weird because it's green. But it's
it's really the color is really strong. The phycocyanin, the blue colorant, and there's a lot of green pigments as well. So the color is really strong. So whatever you mix it with, it will be green. But when you close your eyes, you won't be able to tell which one has the spirulina and which one hasn't.
But it is still food, or
yeah. It's a food source, and
it exists this many millions of years, but in nature, but you still produce it in tanks.
Yeah, you can still grow it. It still grows in nature, but then around the equator. But because our climate isn't really suitable for that, we develop these tanks to create this perfect environment for it to grow.
And why do you want to grow it?
Because it grows really efficiently. So
but what makes it this miracle? This why is it so important to grow? What was your idea about it?
Well, I think the current food industry is really inefficient, and if you are to feed 10 billion people, you can't do that if everybody keeps eating steak. You just need too much water and too much land to do that, and this way you can. I don't think people should stop eating whatever they're eating right now. I think there's a lot of enjoyment in food, and like I said, this food source really doesn't have that much taste, and I don't think the future is that everybody just eats green mush and without any taste or forever. But I think it would be nice to supplement all existing foodstuffs with these kind of products, and that way you enrich them and make sure that you can supplement or other protein sources and still let them taste exactly like you want them to. So lasagna would still taste like a lasagna.
And you will still get all the vitamins and even more beyond.
Yeah, you can go much further than that. And again, the sustainability part. You save so much water and so much land by changing out these different types of proteins.
Because, Tim, a lot of our listeners probably know spirulina from the shop, then in a dried powder. And I must say, it doesn't smell very appealing. If you don't like fish, definitely not. What is the difference between the spirulina we can buy in these bio?
Yeah, that's a big difference. That's the spirulina that's grown around the equator, and it grows naturally, and it's a lot easier. But the problem is the shelf life is pretty limited, so they need to dry it. And whenever you dry it, you lose some nutrients. And then over time, more nutrients get oxidized, so you lose even more. And the taste gets affected pretty badly. So I've had a lot of people try it out. I have some in my lab as well, downstairs. And nobody likes it because it has a pretty bad taste. And while the fresh spirulina doesn't have that taste. So it makes it so much easier to mix it in all the existing foodstuffs.
And you can also keep it in your fridge, right? Because you create these little bags. And I was one of the happy people that could test it. So I have it in my freezer and I'll mix it through a smoothie or my yogurt in the morning. So you can keep that for quite a long time.
Yeah, yesterday I've been eating spirulina that was 4 months old or something, just from freezing it, and then you can just keep it a really long time.
Yeah, and for our listeners who still, that's why I keep on going about what is it, because I think there's one group who knows exactly what spirulina is. It's so difficult. But it's like the hashtag fit girls, when people go to the gym and they work out and they've known this
superfood.
Yeah, this superfood for quite a long time, but they use it as an additive. How do you say that? Like something?
Like a supplement.
Supplement, yeah.
And I think that's not the best way to get an impact. I think it's much nicer if we try to get spirulina out of that superfood corner. Like it's one of the original labeled superfoods. But I think everything can be a superfood if you package it and market it in the right way. I don't really believe in that, and I think the potential of spirulina, the sustainability part especially, it's a bit of a waste to try to push it into some kind of niche and then sell it for a lot of money. I think it would be much nicer if we can make it into a staple food, like rice or potatoes, and then just mix it in all kinds of foodstuffs, and it makes it more normal and
like potato starch or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I have one thing, because Tim, you are not a biologist. You studied industrial product design, right?
Yeah, industrial design engineer.
Yeah. So how did you started growing spirulina, studying?
I first got into contact with spirulina when I did my thesis. I wanted to do something with sustainability and something with like third world countries, or helping out people that need it. So I wrote my thesis proposal to go to Indonesia. And then luckily TNO funded me, and I went there. It was a bit extra hard because I had to do 2 theses at the same time, and so I had a lot of people that wanted to or had to agree on my proposals. After a long time, that finally passed, and I wanted to try to get to find a way for people to grow this kind of stuff themselves, so they could feed their families and stuff locally, and without needing any help from outside. I skipped your answer or your question because I wanted to say that I was doing my internship at TNO, and then I got in contact with a guy who was really into algae, and I've never thought about that, and that really fit into what I wanted to do with my thesis proposal. So that's when I switched, and I thought like, well, it might be good to learn a bit more about this, and then I went to Indonesia, and then I started.
And that
growing
has
myself.
been quite some years ago.
Yeah, that's like 7 years ago.
7
already.
years ago, and
Yeah.
you're also one of the early pioneers here in BlueCity, right? Because you started very small here a couple of years ago, and now, you know, for the people who can't see or who are not here, downstairs in the old cellars, the machine rooms of the former swimming pool, Tim has his lab with big incubators. Looks very futuristic, science fiction, but the food of the future is being produced here.
They're your rice fields, actually.
Yeah. We're like farmers with only like 15 meters of land as a reactor volume is not that big, but because they grow so efficiently, you can still produce quite a lot.
In the basement of a swimming complex.
Yeah.
So maybe it's good to introduce Brent here as well.
Yeah, because Brent Jackson is also here with us, originally from New Zealand. He studied bioprocess engineering and biochemistry, and after that he went to Australia and he did a PhD on extracting oil from algae. And after that he went back to New Zealand, but actually was looking for a job in Europe and moved here. And a mutual friend, or a friend referred to Spiro, and that's how Brent ended up here working with Tim. And he's actually focused on optimizing the research to make the process more efficient. So welcome, Brent, here with us. Good to have you here. Why did you start a collaboration with Tim, and where did you meet?
A friend of mine used to work with a friend of Tim's in the Netherlands, and he referred me to Tim while I was still in New Zealand, actually. And we had a couple of Skype calls, and I think we have similar values, and it seemed like we'd be a good fit. So after I moved over here, we kept in contact, and then after a while, Tim decided to bring me on board.
And what are the challenges to collaborate with Tim, who is an entrepreneur, designer, a visionary,
really
with somebody with a very visionary mind, because you are focusing on optimizing the whole process, but you're also building, for the people who don't know, Tim, they are really building their own bioreactor. So there's a lot of things happening downstairs. How is the collaboration between you two? Do you divide tasks? Do you do things together?
I sort of try and focus on the research and optimization and sort of leave most of the design to Tim. But when I do dabble in design, I usually find my ideas can be improved quite a lot because I don't really know what I'm doing. Like as a scientist, I'll see something which can be improved or be able to figure out what the problem is, but actually acting on that and designing a way around it. I think Tim's got a lot more experience with that, which...
I disagree on that a bit. I think it's for me at least, it's really helpful to have somebody to bounce off ideas off. And to be able to get like a second opinion. And I think a lot of things that Brent suggests are really, really helpful. It's just a different perspective. And you can, by brainstorming with two people, is a lot better than brainstorming with one. So
yeah, because you have to develop a new type of language. We talked about that earlier with our other guest as well.
Could you give an example, maybe?
Yeah.
We're developing a harvesting machine now to get spirulina out of the tank and then filter out the water and then reuse that water and then put it back and then clean it and then put it back in the tank. And that's part of why it works so efficiently. You can keep reusing the water over and over and over again. And the design of that harvesting machine is just, we don't really know what we're doing. Like you have to try something and then see what goes wrong and then try again and then see what goes wrong and then try again. And hopefully you get there, you get to some kind of point where it's working. And I think it works really well to be able to get to all those concepts together and just and save a lot of time by saying, okay, we've got to this point, and then I'll be able to tell Brenton, okay, can you continue working on this, and I'll do something else, because there's, like Emma said, there's so many different things that we need to do. So in that way, I think we just do stuff together and then divide tasks again, and then come back together and then divide again. And our benefit is that we are just two people in one basement, so you can always just get in contact. It's quite short lines.
Very close to
we're actually sharing a desk, so it's quite easy to keep the line short. And as soon as you come up with something, just show it, and then get some feedback, and then go on. So that way.
Because Brent, you've done your PhD on extracting oil from algae. Was that also for food, or?
It was for fuel, biofuel.
Fuels.
Yeah, but I was sort of designing the actual extraction process more, not really concerned about the downstream separation and conversion into fuel, but more about getting the oil from the algae.
And can we also produce a fuel from maybe a byproduct of Spiro?
Well, you can produce carbohydrates from spirulina, but that's not what we're trying to do.
No, so that's out of focus.
Yeah, you run the reactor at different conditions, and the composition of the algae is completely different. So at the moment, it's better for us to try and get the protein content as high as we can, and that's our main goal, I think.
Your main goal now. Why are designers important in your work? Why did you decide to work with Tim, for example? Because there are probably many more companies working on spirulina. We talked about the powders. Why did you choose to work at Spiro?
I don't know.
You just had a good click.
Yeah,
It was the basement, right?
Yeah.
I think there was just, it's sort of, my area is a bit of a niche, and Tim was looking for someone with my background, and it just fit really well, I think.
Did it also change your perception as a scientist? Because here in BlueCity we have a lot of entrepreneurs focusing on the blue economy, using waste, producing food locally, what Tim is doing. Yeah, how did it?
Well, yeah, I've always been like a fan of sustainability. And my thesis, like I said, was on biofuel, because fossil fuels are obviously really bad. So yeah, working with Tim, like producing spirulina is an alternative to other protein sources, and reducing like water usage, and yeah, it's definitely a sustainable process, which
Maybe if we go back, Tim, why does nature inspires your work?
Or how?
I think the what I think is very interesting, and that was also how it started. When I first heard about the potential of algae and spirulina and all kinds of growth processes, I think it's really interesting to figure out that you can have a duplication time that's in hours, of minutes or days, and not in months, and like other protein sources. So.
Like meat, for example.
Like meat, even though they try as hard as they can, you can never have like a chicken duplicate every day, or a few times a day. So
thank God.
They're getting there, and they do their best. But there's like biological limits there, and with
ethical limits.
But they don't really take those that hard, I think. But what I think is very interesting is working with an organism that has this potential, and then trying to unleash that potential. And we can even make like small mechanical tweaks, and then get like 5% or 10% or 20% more efficient. And for us, that's really important. But it's so easy. If we build like the worst reactor, we'll still be able to save more than 90% of water and land compared to other protein sources. So that's like, we are really into the 99, and then hopefully we can add more 9s after that. But then every 9 we add is a 10 times more efficient step. So it's for us that's really important. But I think for most, like if you look at it from another perspective, it's all on the margins already.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because we so this podcast and we talk with 8 different designers, but they all want to show the world can be redesigned. But you really wanted to change the system, and you just dived and went full head in it.
Yeah, and I have to confess, I didn't really know what I was starting off when I started. I thought like, well, just do this, and it's like half a year thesis. Oh, I think I can make something cool, and then started growing my living room, and then after 1 or 2 years, the reactors gotten bigger and bigger, and then they got like 300 liters. So I had to get out of my living room and come in here, and then even then, you thought like, well, I'm already this deep in now, so we'll just keep going, and that's like 5 years ago. So
I'm really curious.
Every time you take another step, you think, well, maybe a few more months, and then maybe a few more months, and you get there, and slowly you get dragged into it, and you think like, well, you've gotten, especially when you look back, you think you can see how far you've gotten, but then there's always more to do.
So at this point, Tim, because you're here for 5 years.
Yeah, I think like 4 or 5, I think.
So if you take a look at the next 5 years, what are the biggest challenges in ways of production? So what is the next step from here, from the swimming pool to feed the whole Netherlands, for example?
I think the biggest concern now is demand, like making sure that if you want to have an investor that invests multiple millions into your concept, you need to prove that there's a demand for those kind of volumes, and to prove that there's a demand for those kind of volumes, you need that product to show it. So you can just have like people taste it in the street and they say, "Do you like it?" and they say yes, but then you can't really use that as a backup to show here there's 200,000 people that want to eat it every day.
Because in the past, I remember that you had contact with different supermarkets and companies, right, who were interested in your
but
products.
then the issue is mostly they're either way too small, like it's individuals that are really interested, and they say like, well, can you send me like 50 grams? And I say like, well, let's not do that, because then we're doing the opposite of what we wanted to do, and you completely degenerate your sustainability idea by just sending out packages all over. Yeah. Or they are way too big, and they say like, okay, but then can we do like 50 tons a week or something like that? And you need quite a lot of investment to be able to get to that supply, and then for them it's also quite easy to just pull the plug if it doesn't sell right in the first few weeks. So it's a pretty tough investment, I think.
But I can imagine that your product so that people want to buy it, like the powder on itself, but it actually is more interesting to see how you can collaborate with like food businesses behind the scenes, like the 50-50 meat and the vegetable burger, to collaborate like that with Spirulina as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's it's a bit of a big step for people to just buy a jar of green paste in the supermarket, paste, and then just mix it with whatever they like. I think it's better if it was like already incorporated in a lot of items that you find in the supermarket.
Yeah, or that chefs, for example, start to work with it, because if I can imagine, we have all these TV programs with.
Yeah, that's part of your initial question about the corona, how it impacted us. Like we had a lot of meetings set up. We were actually starting. We would be able to start producing in March and handing out samples and stuff like that. And then all those meetings got cancelled. And now I think a lot of restaurants have other stuff on their mind than introducing new novel food products and stuff like that. They just want to survive now. So. That part we were really into reaching out and had collaborations with different chefs, but I think that's gotten more to the background right now, and now we try to figure out our own product first.
Yeah, because and also on terms of impact for the mass, so to say, because you rather have like everybody buying your product than just a chef in a very fancy restaurant, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the storytelling is also a very important aspect to tell
That's
people.
very true. But my idea was that the chef could be like a bridge. So if some executive,
like the ambassador, right?
yeah, and if people try it in a restaurant and they heard about it first, and then they see it in the supermarket, then they might think, well, I already tried it first once, so it's not that big of a step anymore.
And I can also imagine that a paste is maybe harder to market than, for example, we've seen the seaweed burger and like alternative proteins again. I can imagine that, marketing your product is maybe more difficult. Is that true, or do you think?
Yeah, most people just haven't never heard about it, so they have no clue what it is. And then when you sell it as we were thinking now we wanted to develop a hummus and sell it as a prepackaged hummus. But then it's like dark green, so people have to think, well, okay, well, what's this? And it's like it takes like an extra step for people to get to know it, and
but still, when you talk about food and working together with chefs, because they are, well, before Corona, they were like the rock stars nowadays. And what you see now is the transition in the food system, that people want to know where their food comes from, and also they want to know if they get in enough nutrition and vitamins and everything. So that therein lies a lot of opportunities for you.
Yeah, I think so, and I think there is like a clear shift towards that, and not just the health aspect, but also the sustainability aspect of it. So I think the market is going in a good direction that way, but still it's a big hurdle.
But still, just think of if McDonald's or something would incorporate your product in their hamburgers, they could say it's sustainable but also very healthy. It would shift the complete focus on.
And that's also a bit tricky. It's also like healthy is always very debatable. So that's always very difficult to claim. You can also put it in your milkshake, but that doesn't mean that you should drink like 10 liters of milkshake every day.
So maybe the reason why I said this is because you developed it for world hunger, to solve that issue. But even if you look here in Rotterdam, there are a lot of poor people here as well who don't have enough money, and the cheapest food isn't very nutritious. Food. Yeah, it's fast food. So
and the nice part about Spirulina is that it's not even that it has so many total vitamin weight, but it's more like it has so many different types of nutrients. So even if you feel healthy, and there's a big chance that one or two of these boxes can be checked with a supplement or with one of these nutrients.
How much does it cost? Or for this hummus, are you, for example, if I want to,
that's also those things we are really unsure of, because it's really highly dependent on the production volume. And right now we're producing at a very small scale. So the biggest cost now is just, like I said, we're just 2 farmers with 8 meters of land or 10 meters of land. So it's really hard to get that break even. And that's why the price right now I think it's like 50 or 60 euros per kilo is the actual price. But if we were to scale it up tenfold, the actual cost would only go up maybe twice or 3 times.
And how much do you need a day just to for a healthy diet?
Again, a very difficult question, because it's completely different from for everybody. Like I always say, like if you get all the nutrients that you need already in your body, you don't need anything. There's nothing in the world that's healthy for you at all, and it's better just to eat less than but there's people that are missing a lot, and if you don't get any protein in your body, then you might want to eat a lot more than that. So there's not like a one golden rule. It's like, oh, well, just eat 5 grams a day and you'll be fine.
Yeah, because I also remember, Tim, that we once, a long time ago, had a conversation about the little jellies sometimes people get in hospitals to get a lot of proteins at once, like a kind of desserts. And I remember you were saying that's also an option, you know, the whole like hospitals and elderly homes where people need to get a lot of vitamins, but is that still an idea? I can imagine now, you know, with the current crisis and a lot of people are getting ill, that they want to take something more natural than a pill or any other supplement.
It's all about your natural resistance. Like if you have a healthy diet and you make sure that you get everything you need from your food, then you just have a higher resistance, so you are less likely to get sick. So in that way, I think it's a very cheap way of saving on healthcare, is by making sure that people in hospitals and elderly homes are well fed, at least.
Yeah.
And right now, a lot of people, even in Dutch hospitals, are just underfed and they're malnourished. Yeah. And you pay like hundreds of euros a day just to be there, and they easily give you pills that are like it costs a lot of money per pill, but just spending like €1 or €2 on food might have a good impact as well.
So if we
make sure that you save a lot.
If we have any listeners that working in healthcare and are interested in Tim's products, you're of course very welcome to contact us or Tim if you're interested to invest in this. We talked about it earlier, Tim, you're one of the first people here in BlueCity when it just started. Why did you choose to base your company here and maybe in Rotterdam?
Well, I was still living in Delft at the moment, so it was nice that it was nearby. And then when I just first came in here, it wasn't officially BlueCity yet, and it was just Mark and Simon from Rotterdam, just like anti-kraak renting out squatting in there in some rooms. And I immediately got inspired by the building and by the people and the potential that everything had, and I thought like, well, just it's a nice start point, because you already have some colleagues, and I was by them I spent like 5 or 6 years by myself in the basement here, so it's always nice to have like people around who are like-minded and share some common goals and can help you out, because you all go like similar paths, even though you're working on something completely different. You still share some knowledge, and in the beginning even some tools. You just need like if you need a screwdriver and you spend half a day just going to a bouwmarkt and then coming back and then tightening it, and then you find out, oh, you need another one with another bit, then you're not efficiently spending your time. So I think it's also nice to be able to share something. And
could you give an example of how you work together here?
We just our spirulina consumes quite a lot of CO2. So we need a CO2 source to be able to feed our spirulina, and it converts it into like the biomass, and then exhausts a lot of oxygen. And the brewery here in the building, they produce a lot of CO2 as a byproduct of their yeasting process. And now we're working on finding a way to clean up that CO2 or that exhaust from their tanks, and then storing it under pressure, and then we can just pump it in our reactors and convert it. And it's nice for us because we can get free CO2, and for them it's nice because they can produce CO2 neutral beers.
Oh.
Yeah, and you're neighbors, right? Well, almost neighbors.
Yeah, we can see them down the hallway.
In this big building.
We need like I think in total we need like 50 meters of pipe or something like that, just to get everything hooked up. Wow. So it's not that much.
And Tim, if you can dream about your future factory, where will that be and how would it look like?
I don't think I want to have one huge factory. I think it's nicer to have like several production plants in different cities, so you can keep the local production going. And I don't think you need to have like a huge warehouse in the east and then transport all your spirulina to Amsterdam every morning. It's nicer just to have a production plant in Amsterdam. And because our production is so efficient, we can produce a lot in 1 square meter, like 100 to 1,000 times more than with traditional agriculture. So that's why we can just also grow in every basement or in every rooftop or in every...
Yeah.
And it's also very interesting with the beer brewery, what you were just talking about, because in every city almost has a beer brewer, and then you can close the loop locally.
Yeah.
And especially a lot of new breweries or brewing beer became so popular that we have a lot of micro breweries, which I believe produce a bit less efficient. So, but here we showed the opposite, that a small brewery can also be a source of, or provide sources for others.
Yeah, and they reuse rainwater, and we're also thinking about reusing waste heat from them, so exchanging that as well. Because the spirulina needs to be at 30 degrees, and the tanks are well isolated, so you don't need that much energy, but it's still nice to get that for free as well, and then just exchange that.
So everybody from New Zealand and Australia to Groningen and Maastricht can start this, right?
Yeah,
or we can.
Yeah. I do believe that there's like an optimal solution for every area. So if anybody in Australia would contact me and say like, well, I want a reactor just like that, I would think like, well, it's probably better just to use the natural sunlight and use your natural climate resources. But for New Zealand, it might be very interesting because the climate is very similar. So there's a lot of areas, I think, where our reactor would be very interesting. But I do believe that for areas like especially around the equator, you need a completely different system. And that's also what we're doing right now. We're co-developing a system in Curaçao now. One of our guys, or a guy that we are partnering with, is actually in Curaçao now and trying to do some initial tests. So we get some more data and then figure out what an optimal reaction system would be for areas around the equator. And that's going to be much more low cost and lower yields as well, but it doesn't matter that much because you have plenty of land and plenty of sun. So
I hear a lot of opportunities.
yeah, it keeps us busy.
So collaboration with science and design or engineering is inevitable for a more, let's say, sustainable blue, green future. How do you foresee the future of, let's say, biodesign in your work? Also, Brent, maybe you can start.
It's better.
At Spiro, yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Or just the future in general. What is the value of your co-creation for the field and for the future?
Yeah, I mean, we still have to scale the process up, which will have its own challenges, and designing reactors for Curaçao and other environments or climates is very different, utilizing sunlight instead of lead-based technology. But I don't know, I think we're always going to come across new problems which will require design and science to tackle. Yeah.
And because you talk about it like it's a normal thing, but I guess we have a lot of listeners who never really thought about it. Mm-hmm. You can't work without each other, right? Because you need each other, you need each other's knowledge. You also need other people, maybe like engineers or other entrepreneurs or from the business field to accelerate. But especially if we focus on science and design, do you think how do you approach it from your science background? Because it's not like that every scientist collaborates with a designer, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a lot more efficient because when we want to design something for the reactor, we can work together and you can bypass a lot of the hurdles which you might have if you're going to design something, build it, use it, find problems while using it, but we can sort of predict what might happen with the process if we know the organism and how it's going to grow.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, it's a lot quicker, more efficient, and cheaper, I think. Yeah.
And for you, Tim, of course, you also said you were part of TNO or interned over there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you started collaborating with science in a very early stage. And of course, you can't work without a scientist like Brent, for example.
I think for me, I'm much more practical. So I like just to build stuff and test stuff and see where it goes. And I think that's necessary for like a lot of science just stays in the papers, and then people come up with a way to do something, and then they test it and they think, well, it might be. Mostly the conclusion is, well, this might be interesting and requires further research. And then hopefully somebody picks it up a few years later and think, well, this might be interesting, and I'll do some more about that. And it stays in that theoretical field for quite a long time.
Yeah, I've also seen that in my own work. Okay. Just open up the doors of the labs and start to collaborate with design.
Yeah, I think that's what designers can bring. But on the other hand, I think also there's a lot of designers who just try something and they have no clue what they're doing, like I did as well in the beginning. And it will take a lot longer if you just keep doing that by yourself. And sometimes it's just better just to have somebody that's a bit more organized and a bit more knowledgeable about how to do research, to make sure that you don't draw your own wrong conclusions and then keep working on that for a few years. So yeah, I think both fields can really help each other in that way.
Well, thank you. And last but not least, could you, both of you, give us a word of advice from your perspective for some like new talents who will join or come to the lab? Or aspiring designers or scientists or engineers?
Maybe building on what I just said. I think it's important not to stay in your own bubble too long. Just make sure that you just ask for help, even though you think you don't need it. But it's quite easy just to have a talk with somebody like for half an hour and then learn more from that than just working by yourself for a few months. So I think that's it. Just find corporations and do that.
And for you, Brent?
Yeah, I agree with that. But also, if you have an idea and you try it and it doesn't work, don't just give up. Figure out why it didn't work and what you can do to improve it.
Trial and error.
Yeah, of course. And if you're struggling with like the design side of it, get someone to help you design it, and vice versa. Like if you're good at the design and you need help with the science, you just have to ask.
Yeah. So
you need a long breath for this.
Yeah, a long breath. I think maybe just to wrap up our conversation, we have many listeners, of course, probably from all around the world. And we ask every guest here, maybe you can give a short pitch of what you need, for example, to scale or for implementation, and maybe more specific, who you need to move forward. Is it a company or investors or you name it, a market? So if you have a question for our audience, you can...
I think it's very difficult. I think we've already covered quite a lot about that earlier. For me, the struggle with finding a balance between developing the technology and finding the market, it's like a chicken and an egg thing. So you always think, well, I always come from a point where I thought like, I just need the technology, and then if it's all working, then people will want to buy it anyway, and that's fine. And then you won't be able to go to any restaurants if you don't have a product, and if you don't have a product, you won't get investments if you can show that nobody wants your product. So it's always a bit of a balance between those things. And right now we just mostly focus on the technology part, and our marketing research thing is really undeveloped. So maybe it's always nice to have people if they have suggestions about that, or if they have.
So marketing is a thing,
marketing and sales and those kind of things that are really just aliens to us. Like,
you can't do everything. So maybe we have somebody who is interesting to help you out.
Maybe a rock star chef. You never know. Yeah. So Tim and Brent, thank you so much for joining us today and joining us and making time for this talk.
Yeah, a big shout out to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
This Growcast was hosted by Barbara Vos and Emma van der Leest and produced by BlueCity Lab. This podcast was realized with funding from the municipality of Rotterdam and Creative Industries Fund NL and was edited by Puree Productions. We also want to give a shout out to Nienke Binnendijk, director of BlueCity Lab, and Sabine Biesheuvel, director of BlueCity, and actually everyone else from the BlueCity team for their trust and never-ending support. Until next time, thank you for listening.